I recognize the Minister for Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries and Agriculture, and member for the 7th District, Dr. the Honorable Natalio D. Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to be able to debate this very important amendment. And I do support the amendment, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that this amendment targets no particular economic group. Just as the Premier said, he saw me in the line at Western Union. And let me say, Mr. Speaker, that when I was in school, Western Union saved me quite a bit. Because we all know how it is as a student when you have to get some quick money, you're running low on funds, and you have to get some money. And certainly, we all have family members who are students, who are living and working elsewhere, and every now and again we have to tap them up a little bit. And I certainly saw my good friend, Honorable Attorney General, in there at the same time as well. But we recognize that this is a service that's important to all different groups of individuals, persons in the Honorable Attorney General's income bracket, and other persons as well. So this is not seeking to target unfairly any particular group. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to put my comments in context, because this is an issue that I'm very passionate about. I'm extremely passionate about it. And I remember when I ran in politics, it would have to be 8 to 9 years ago, with People's Patriotic Alliance. And one individual said, you know what, you're a good man, but you won't get elected. And he said, because you don't know how to lie. He said, to be able to get elected, you have to be able to tell a good lie. And he said, you don't really seem to have that ability. So I have to apologize.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the band. Honorable Fraser, on what information do you have?
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, I rise to take exception to what the member is saying. I think the next thing he's going to say is that it took him 9 years to learn to lie. And it gives the impression that we are liars. I'm not one. And anyone else who doesn't stand up to say that they're not a liar might be one.
Minister, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me just say to the member, I do not think that the member is a liar, or anybody else sitting here is a liar. I was just telling the House what was said to me. I didn't say whether I agreed or disagreed. But this particular individual was simply making the point he did not see me as a liar. So I apologize in advance, because I'm going to have to say some truth that might be hard to listen to. And I can't really help myself. It's just who I am. Probably persons who do not have roots here might get vexed with me. Probably persons who do have roots here will get vexed with me. But I will say the truth as I see it. Our economy has, over a period of some years, and this year we celebrate 70 years since the restoration of our Legislative Council. And despite what some persons would have you believe, our people worked hard to build this economy. And I always enjoy listening to my ministerial colleague, Honorable Calvin Malone, because he'll go through for you the legislation that was passed and the initiatives that were taken since 1950 to position us to have the economy that we have today. And when we talk about this economy and what it has done for the people of the Virgin Islands and people from around the world, we should always acknowledge and pay homage to our foreparents. Our foreparents did not have this type of economy. Our foreparents used to have to ride up and down on donkeys, and they didn't have electricity. And in fact, in this region, we were behind most other persons in terms of modernization. We had a small, tight-knit society. We went to church and we prayed, we worked hard, we farmed, we fished. And just as others have said, we went away to where we had to go away to, and we worked until we could build this economy to where it is today. And many persons, Mr. Speaker, have been able to benefit from that. But let us always remember, let us never forget the way we got to where we are today. And our economy has attracted persons from all over the world. And these persons, I hope persons don't use this debate as an opportunity to sow seeds of division in our community, to put belanger against non-belanger. And we spoke, the Premier, the leader of the opposition, condemned the sentiment that's coming forth in regard to our Filipino brothers and sisters. And I add my voices, I associate myself with those sentiments. Now is not the time, Mr. Speaker, for us to be divided and to play games. Some persons I know will use this as an opportunity on Facebook and on the blogs and all of these things to say, look, BV Islanders don't like us, they want to destroy us, and get into the back and forth. I respect every single person who have come here. I understand why they've come here. Because everybody wants to be able to better their lives, and be able to better the lives of their family, whether their family is here with them in the Virgin Islands or their family remains home. But as a legislator, Mr. Speaker, and as a patriotic BV Islander, I understand very clearly what my role is. The Virgin Islands that was built by my foreparents, and that is providing a livelihood for Virgin Islanders and other persons. We have to make sure that the Virgin Islands remains viable for generations to come. For generations to come. And there must be somebody that's going to look out for the welfare of the Virgin Islands. Persons will look out for their own individual welfare and the welfare of their families. But there must be a group of individuals who are going to look out for the Virgin Islands. Now, this economy has attracted persons from many places. And in my view, Mr. Speaker, there are two ways countries that attract workers from elsewhere can approach it. I've seen this when I was in the United States, Mr. Speaker. I've seen one approach. Places like United States, the approach they have is you can come from whatever country you come and give labor. And you can stay in your corners, in your enclaves. You work hard, You make whatever money you make, and you try your best to support yourself and the persons in your home countries. And we see that with the United States and Mexico, etc. There is not the real push or impetus to assimilate those persons into the society. They have invited them simply to give their labor and not necessarily to become a full part of society. And so they may not attend the celebrations you think are important in the society. They may not seek to assimilate your customs or participate in the society in that type of way. They're simply there to come and walk, make their money, and support whatever it is they're trying to do in their lives. I have to say to you, Mr. Speaker, I don't favor that approach as it pertains to building the BVI, especially in the situation where the majority of persons who have come from elsewhere are the majority in the society. We cannot build a BVI like that. I favor approach, Mr. Speaker, of assimilation. Persons come from elsewhere and they make a contribution to the society, but they become a part of the society. They care about the society. They care about the seniors in the society. They care about the education system. They care about BVI landlords. They care about persons from all the different countries. They don't just associate with groups here and there. They have come not just for the BVI to build them. They have come to build the BVI for each other. And yes, we know persons come and they have their jobs, which they're paid for, and that is good. But you cannot judge your commitment to a territory based on what you get paid to do. This is something that we have to realize. When persons talk about building the BVI and who builds the BVI, and the BVI was built by many hands, I agree. Persons from elsewhere, persons from the BVI. But you don't judge it based on what you were paid to do. Look at what you were not paid to do. What president was it that said, ask not what your, was that Roosevelt who said that? Or John F. Kennedy? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. So when I look at persons who have come from elsewhere, and you see them in family support network, packing boxes and doing things for the elderly, and you see persons in Rotary Club working for the society, and they're not getting paid for it. Those are the persons who I truly respect in our society who have come from elsewhere. Not just those who come, do a job, and then majority of what they make, they send home. And of course, I know there are valid reasons to send money home. And I support persons supporting their families back home. But we have to engender a spirit of sacrifice among people who have come to reside among us. If you send in $100, $7 can go to the seniors, to the education system, to first-time home ownership. And we're not picking on any particular group, because some persons will send $100 and we'll have a fee of $7, and some persons will send $1,000 and they'll give a fee of $70. If you send $10,000, you'll send a fee of $700. So you're giving in proportion to what you have. If you only could send $10, what's that, 70 cents? You're only giving in proportion to what you have. So if you don't have as much to send, you're not going to give as much as somebody else. It's a percentage. And some people will send more, and some people will send less. But this government, the services rendered by this government, I guarantee you all the taxes that persons pay cannot pay for the services that the government renders. We speak about the 8% payroll taxes, but did we mention that the first $10,000 is exempt? Quite a lot of persons probably not even paying taxes until September or October. So, and then these persons are getting services. I'll give you an example. We have the schools. Quite a number of non-belongers are in the schools. I met it like that. And what they tell you is, I've been told, from human rights perspective, you can't stop them. That's what I was told. And the persons tell you, I cannot afford to put my children in private school. But yet, a lot of them are sending lots of money away. And then the same money that they're sending away that we will put this fee on will help us, because some of that is for educational infrastructure, will help us to create more spaces in the schools for the very same children to be able to attend. Somebody, Mr. Speaker, has to have a heart for the Virgin Islands. Somebody has to say, look at the children in the schools who barely have enough space. They're squeezed up together. And I agree, Mr. Speaker, that there are other areas in our economy where we have to ensure that we plug the holes. I agree. We can bring those after, and they will bring additional revenue. I agree that we have to collect the uncollected revenue. I don't think that argument is any way in opposition or in conflict with what we're doing today. All of those things are necessary. The banks. I think the first thing persons mentioned is the money going out with the banks. And I trust my Honorable Premier, because it's said whether this is urgent or not. There was a question of whether this is urgent or COVID related. And I will have to say to you that it is both. It is urgent and it is COVID related, because COVID-19 is not just a health crisis. It is creating an economic crisis. And I have a premier. He's a visionary. And all what people have been talking about before doing, he's going to do, because he's a man of action. So this is just one measure among many which will be coming to create revenue. And persons don't quite understand yet, but we're going to need every cent of it. Everything that we're doing here to raise revenue. And trust me, if persons out there on the streets have to choose between being laid off and whether you're going to pay 7 cents out of $1 for a transaction, I know what they're going to choose. Don't take your salaries for granted. Don't take the situation that we have here in the Virgin Islands for granted. This COVID-19 is no joke. Tourism is gone for the rest of the year. We have lots of persons who will be unemployed. It is no joke. We can't every measure come here and seek to knock it down. Do we have alternatives? When the hungry people come and decide, well, what you going to do for us? Are you going to bring the revenue? This is one measure among many. There are more coming. And I hope to God, Mr. Speaker, that when the measures come, we're not just knocking them down. Because we have a territory to support. So the revenue, we have to collect it. The banks, we have to deal with that part. If we have other ways to making money, we're going to need all of that money to be able to support us in this time. Mr. Speaker, I would identify this period of time as the most difficult time in the modern history of the Virgin Islands. I wouldn't compare it to slavery. Slavery was an awful institution. But in the modern development of the BVI, from let's say 1950, straight up till now, this is the most difficult period that this Virgin Islands will face. I'm grateful to have a Premier like Honorable Andrew Foy in place at this time, and a Health Minister like Honorable Calvin Malone, and the cabinet members that we have, and the House of Assembly members that we have on the government and the opposition side. I'm grateful that we have a group together in this particular time. Mr. Speaker, we have this question of whether money should be taxed twice. And I want to address that. In the United States of America, I'll start there, persons are paid a salary, and many places in the world they pay a much higher tax than you pay in the BVI. Certainly we know we don't have income tax here. And certainly know that we are zero tax jurisdiction here. And when it comes to income tax, right? We have different duties and we have a payroll tax, etc. But places like European countries, they pay much higher taxes. We perhaps take the low taxes we have here for granted. But in the United States and in Europe and places like that, the same salary that they get taxed more than the BVI, they will go to the store to buy an item and have to pay a sales tax or a value-added tax. That's money that was taxed already. Let me come right here to the BVI. And in fact, this is an important point that we have to make. Right here in the BVI, we pay quite a lot of money to employees in government. And I'm not going to let our employees in government, many of them Virgin Islanders, get away. Because we too have to spend more of our money in our local economy. A lot of us let a lot of money go to St. Thomas and Puerto Rico and Miami, etc. And as a brief aside, I'll just make the point before I continue with the other point I was making, that in these days and times, I'm pleading with my people here in the Virgin Islands, shop locally. Shop as local as possible, because you could be saving your family member's job. You could be saving yourself. In fact, now is the time, Mr. Speaker, for those persons who want to take their juice company to the next level. Instead of us buying Tropicana from the store, let's bottle some juice and sell it. Because we're going to have to diversify our economy. And in whatever ways we can support our own economy, that's going to help us get through this difficult period. Instead of going and buying Ivory soap or Dove soap or something like that, let's make our own soap and let everybody support it here in the Virgin Islands. because we're gonna save some jobs or we're gonna create some jobs here. We have to think in that way. But many of us take a lot of our money and we go to St. Thomas, Puerto Rico, etc. with it. But when we're coming back through at the ferry dock, at the ports, even though we're already taxed on our salary, Mr. Speaker, you have to pay something when you come back with those items. So this whole idea of being taxed twice, depending on the type of transaction you do, you will have to pay a duty or a tax. And that's just the way the economy functions. You pay taxes and duties in a number of different areas. You'll never get a situation where this money that you are paid will not ever be taxed again, or you won't get any more fees again. That's unrealistic. That's not how the economy functions. Mr. Speaker, I want to be very efficient in terms of my use of time. So I know there are other persons to speak. I believe I've made my point in a very general sense, and I'll leave my colleagues to say what I have not said. But Mr. Speaker, I want to implore the members of the public. It is not a regular time. It is not a normal time. Now is the time, Mr. Speaker, for us to, those who want to be a part of the BVI, all of us have to be on board to build the BVI. And before I finish, I can't finish without speaking about the areas that the money is going to. That's very important to speak about, Mr. Speaker, because about 60% of the money is going to my ministry. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that the money will be well spent. It is going to be well spent. I mean, you couldn't think of more appropriate areas to put this money, because this money is going to go toward training our own labor force so that we do not have to import as much labor as we have been doing. The very same persons who sending this money away, this money might be used to educate, to train your children to function within this particular society, or to give your children scholarships. And when it comes to agriculture and fisheries, thank God, we needed a dedicated source of revenue in these areas. Agriculture, fisheries, the money that the department was getting was mainly to pay salaries. That's mainly what was taking place. I've been trying to think of ways for us to find some sustainable financing to finance the agriculture and the fisheries program. And the Premier didn't even consult with me about this, but it looks like he was thinking about the same thing. He's thinking about the same thing. And this money is going to be a Minister of Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration told me, $246,000 a year, just under $1.3 million a year. When I tell you that it's not a lot of money, but this money will transform agriculture and fisheries. I guarantee you, this money will transform agriculture and fisheries. And we will have a viable agricultural and fisheries industry as a result of this money that's coming. It's going to be life-changing. It is going to be industry-changing. This thing will transform the BVI. And we all have seniors in our district. And I know members in the House bemoan the fact that we need more programs for our seniors. My heart bleeds for the seniors. The seniors need a dedicated source of revenue to fund their programs. And this is it. And I would not knock it down. Not at all. The seniors deserve to have that dedicated source of funding for their programs. And I applaud the Premier for making sure that they are included and not left behind. The seniors might have been knocking about for the last few years, but under the leadership of the Premier Andrew Foy, I'm so happy to say that better days are ahead for our seniors. Mr. Speaker, I don't know how we can say it's unfair when members of the opposition have gotten up and stated without a doubt what happened to the programs for our seniors. Is it just me who's remembering this, Mr. Speaker? I'm speaking from words from members of the opposition. And I agree with them. There's a lot we agree on. The seniors have not been treated fairly over the last few years. And Honorable Fraser, member for the 3rd District, if I can call his name, has spoken eloquently about the programs that used to exist with the seniors. Somewhere along the line, I'm not sure if it was 8, 9 years ago, some of those programs have gone by the wayside. And I think it's sad, Mr. Speaker. It's sad. And for all we pushing around cats for the seniors and all we doing this, all we doing that, what about those programs for the seniors? It is time for them to come back. And under the leadership of Premier Andrew Foy and the Minister for Health and Social Development, those programs will come back, Mr. Speaker, and the seniors can look forward to better days. And first-time home ownership, Lord, our young people in our society, they're knocking about too. I know all about it. It's next to impossible right now for young persons to be able to build a home. And I applaud, I won't say too much about that because I don't want to steal the Minister for Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration's thunder there. But Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleague has informed me that I've reached to my limit. Just in case the leader of opposition thinks that he's the only one who's being limited, I think he spoke for a lot longer than I spoke, and my honorable member has put me under a restriction in terms of time, because we understand what's happening here. There are a lot of important things that have to be done out there, and I don't want to be just here repeating myself. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to be able to present on this very important amendment. And again, I want to implore the public. I want to implore all of those persons who use the money services. This is out of a spirit of sacrifice and unity and togetherness. And the Junior Minister for Tourism used a phrase that I think is appropriate. We all have to do our part to build the BVI. It's not just about building ourselves. We have to put a little something in. Of course, we all have our limitations in terms of what we can give, but we have to give something for the BVI because the BVI has been good to us and we should give something back to the BVI. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.